volunteers. This is Jeff Nevin, one of your directors of religious education here at Fort Bragg. And I want to take a minute to thank you for your volunteer service to our soldiers and families. Volunteers are the backbone of the Chaplain Corps, and we couldn't accomplish our mission without you. So thank you so very much for that. The service you provide has an eternal impact on many children, and we're very grateful. So today, I want to talk about a few things few steps it takes to be a volunteer here at Fort Bragg. Over the next few minutes, volunteers, I want to talk to you about the steps it takes to volunteer here at Fort Bragg. Every year, volunteers are required an orientation training, and this abbreviated video today will take that place. However, we also recommend that you view the full training video that IMCOM has produced that we'll also post on our Facebook page. Okay, volunteers, the first thing we want to discuss today is the Code of Conduct. If you'll notice on our Facebook page, there's an attachment there with the Code of Conduct. I want you to take a few minutes and read that Code of Conduct and sign it. Once completed, give it to your chaplain, DRE, or coordinator, and we'll put that Code of Conduct in your volunteer file as a record of your training today. The second thing that we want to discuss is child suitability checks. Per Army Directive 2014-23 and DOTI 1402.05, all individuals working with minors must have a child suitability check. We understand that most service members have a national security check, however, it doesn't mean they're suitable to work with children. So everyone is required a child suitability check. The checks are good for 5 years and they transfer across the Army. So if you need a check or your check is about to expire, please let your chaplain, DRE, or coordinator know, and we'll do our best to take care of you. Tim and I have done our best to expedite the process to make it easy on the volunteer. And the third and final thing I want to talk about is the volunteer registration forms. Most of our programs and services require volunteers to fill out a registration form and give to the ministry leaders. That information provided to the ministry leaders gives them an opportunity for them to contact you or your loved ones in case of emergency. So once you're done with that, please give it to them. Again, we thank you for your volunteer service, and may God bless you.
So adult-student ratio. The rule is that there should be 1 adult per 15 students. However, 2 adults must be present in the room at all times, even if there are only 2 to 3 students. This does include restroom breaks, so it's highly recommended that you go together as a group into the hallway so that everybody has a chance to go to the restroom.
Sometimes when we're working with children, they might get injured. And when they're injured, we do need to document this situation. We also need to make sure that they're okay. So if we come to a point where a child is injured, we ensure they're okay. If we need to, we will contact the parents and let them know, like, hey, this is big and this is happening. We might even end up needing to have to contact the ambulance or call the hospital. If that happens, just do everything you need to do, but we still need to document everything that had happened, and we will have forms where you can write out the whole situation and you can mark where the child was injured. Now, most of the time, we're not going to have an injury that's so big like that we need to go to the hospital, but even if they scrape their knee or if they just kind of hurt their finger, we still want to make a documentation of this, so that way we can be sure that we paid attention to this situation, and that way we can let the parents know that this situation had happened and everybody knows everything that had happened. And if you ever have any questions, you can always ask anybody that you know is around, like Jeff or Tim or Holly or Amber and me, and we will happily give you any kind of information you need. So something to keep in mind when you're working with children is that not everyone learns the same. And so sometimes your children that you work with might have special needs, and that is okay. And we just will change how we work with them, and that way we can still make sure that we get the same message to them that we're getting to everybody else. So if we have somebody who maybe has a hard time sitting still, or maybe has a hard time with the way we're working with them right now, especially with virtual learning, it's okay to ask the parents to come and sit and be involved and to maybe help keep their child focused, or to even, if you need to, send out an email or a special kind of message to that parent, so that way they can know the talking points of the day, and maybe that parent can work with the child on their own, and then that way the child still gets to be a part of everything, and they can still share all of their knowledge maybe in the next class. And just keep in mind that patience is a big key here, and it goes a long way, and so do smiles, because we've all been in that situation where we don't get it, or it's hard for us to fit into the mold that the rest of the class is fitting into. And so just keep that moment in mind. Remember those times that you felt that way, and just think about how maybe you can curve your way of teaching to help teach anybody that might need extra help.
Hi, we're here today to talk about abuse in our chapel and our religious education programs. Child abuse is a challenging topic. However, we all do need to be made aware of its implications on our programs and how do we deal with it when we encounter it. The number one thing is get to know your kids. Know your kids, know your youth. That way you can tell if something is different. The second thing is pay attention, both to our kids and when new kids enter the program. Say, for instance, how do they behave? Are they shy, particularly if we raise our voice or raise our hands? Do they seem fearful in an unreasonable way? And the other thing to pay attention to is their physical condition. Does it look like they're gaunt? Does it look like they haven't eaten in 6 weeks? Does it look like they've got any physical signs of abuse, which could be numerous? Could be anything from bruises to marks to broken bones that the youth either comes up with different explanations to different leaders when they're explaining how it happened, or they can't come up with a good reason. And when you bring it up, they're just like trying to change the subject. So unless they got injured doing something stupid in a skiing accident and they're just embarrassed to talk about it, which could happen, that would be a red flag to pay better attention. Also, when our children get bruises, it's totally normal to get bruises, especially with some of our younger kids, on the front side of your legs, on the front side of your arms, because kids are kids and they'll run into stuff and they'll run into trees and they'll run into walls. That doesn't tend to happen wide open, full throttle, backwards. Those could be marks from a switch or a belt or some other sign, potential sign of abuse. So pay attention for that kind of thing. If you happen to see that, or if a child says something, don't discount what they're saying. Listen to them carefully, listen to their words, and bring it to the attention of one of your religious ed coordinators or directors of religious ed or your senior pastor, where they can sit down and follow up further. Because the worst thing we could do is not to improperly report.
Hey volunteers, it's good to see you all, kind of, virtually. I wish we could do this in person because a lot of this goes better dialoguing. But the few topics that I'm going to cover with you is touch policy, temp checks and sick kids, and student behavioral guidelines. All right, so this first one is one of the hardest ones for me, the touch policy. My love language is touch, and so I love hugs, but unfortunately we have to really refrain from this, not just because of COVID, but also so that way we protect ourselves and protect the children from inappropriate activities. Although it might be nice to give the little Susie a hug, we really do need to refrain. You can either fist bump, elbow, or once everything gets straightened out, we don't have COVID anymore, you can do the sidearm hugs. But don't put kids in your lap. Don't do the full frontal hugs or anything like that. Always make sure that you protect yourself and protect the children. It only takes a 10-second look for things to go bad. So just always protect yourself, protect the kids. In light of everything that's going on, we will start doing temp checks. We will have non-contact thermometers, and everybody will be temp checked before they come in. And it's just going to be part of our procedures. Same thing with sick kids. In the past, we've always had the policy for sick kids. If somebody brings their child and they're obviously sick, discharge from the nose, croupy cough, anything like that, fever, unfortunately, we cannot accept them into our program. It isn't just for the safety of the other kids, it's your safety also. Plus, that kid really needs to be at home getting some TLC from mom and dad. So if somebody does check their kid in and you don't notice it right away, or their temperature was fine, and later on you see that they are having symptoms, you need to go ahead and pull them aside. And just like Shannon said, 2 sets of eyes on. Always have to have 2 adults, 2 sets of eyes on. But we will call their parents and have them come pick them up. And then lastly, but not least, student behavioral guidelines. We are volunteers. This is not a right. This is a privilege for the children to come. And so we have some pretty strict guidelines to follow with our students. And if they do not behave, we do call parents and have them come home. Does this happen? Yes, it does. Every semester we do have several parents that have to come and pick up their kids. And don't be afraid to bring up if there's any kids that are misbehaving. If you have a kid that's acting out in class, the other ones aren't able to learn about Jesus. And if you're having to continually correct, you're not able to feed into those kids. If you ever have any questions with this, like Jeff said, we know that you're not going to remember everything out of this, and we don't expect you to. This is the fire hose training. But always feel free to ask Holly, me, Shannon, Anna, Tim, Jeff, any of us, any of the leaders. You can ask us and we can get you straight away on this. Remember, we want you here. We want you happy. We want you serving God, but not at the expense of having to deal with unruly children.
Hey guys, we are so thankful for you as volunteers, for what you give and for what you do. We know that lots of times this giving gets us to a place of empty. We're tired, we're frustrated, the kids are running around, all kinds of craziness might be happening. But it is incredibly important that as volunteers, as leaders, as spiritual leaders for these kids, that we continue to be vigilant in our body language and our words. We always need to be speaking out of a place of patience and kindness and grace. We don't want to communicate anything ungodly or unkind, mean in our actions or in our words. And this does include swearing and foul language. I know we live in a community where that's very prevalent, but especially when we are here around the kids, we need to be guarding our mouths and making sure that our hearts are filled with good things and that what's coming out of our mouth is good things and what's coming out with our actions. The other thing that I need to remind you guys of is that we have policies in all of our facilities in case there were to be an active shooter, a fire, or severe weather. The primary thing that you need to do is talk to your coordinator or chaplain to make sure where all those safe places are, make sure where your meeting places are, and that everybody knows where they need to go. That's going to be different for each event, for each meeting place. So just make sure you're in communication. Ask those questions of your coordinator or chaplain. And that's all I've got for you guys. Thank you so much for doing this training. We hope that it has been a help to you. And again, any questions that you have on anything that Jeff, Tim, Amber, Anna, Shannon, or myself have mentioned, please just reach out to any of us. We'll be so happy to answer those questions for you. And we will see you around Fort Bragg.